Hello. I wanted to continue talking a little bit today about the development of competing responses or exercises for treating tics. Now, the number of possible tics a person may experience is immensely diverse. The range of tics can be essentially anything that a person's body or brain can do, whether or not it's a good idea to do those things. So we won't be able to cover every possibility, but I believe we can take a little bit of time to talk about how we go about designing an exercise for the treatment of tics. Now, one of the first things I want to talk about is the idea of suppression, or simply holding in a tic or not doing it. There has been a great deal of research previously done to develop effective suppression techniques for tics. It was assumed that this would effectively treat tics, but the results never really seemed to support the idea of simply attempting to suppress tics. What we usually found was that an individual may be able to suppress a tic for an extended period of time, potentially hours at a time, but that the tics would tend to show up afterward, sometimes as a burst. This led gradually to the development of an alternative approach, which was what we would call competing responses. And that's based on an older theory called habit reversal training. And habit reversal training is a good system for reducing a variety of different kinds of habits, as the name would imply. And the current approach to treatment is really just kind of a modification of habit reversal training. It's more refined and applied precisely to tics, and so it works well with tics, but it's not dramatically different from habit reversal training either. So, first thing we want to do is try to figure out what sorts of movements do we want to use for an exercise in the treatment of a tic. If I'm going to be trying to develop an exercise with an individual, I want to understand the tic itself. Now, one of the things I can do is I can ask the person to describe the tic or show me what the tic looks like, faking it or whatever. And usually this has the result of actually making the tic occur. One of the kind of funny things about tics is if we talk about tics, they tend to show up. So that's one of the first things you can do in order to try to begin developing your exercises. Say, well, what does a tic look like? What does it involve? What muscles am I using? What joints and what connective tissues, such as tendons, are involved in performing this tic? Now I'm thinking mainly about motor tics here, and maybe what we'll do is we'll talk more about vocal tics in yet another video, because we could spend a lot of time trying to cover all the different types of tics. And I don't want these videos to be especially long. So, if we're talking about a motor tic then, let's say I have a tic, we'll pretend where I have to turn my head, like that, maybe. Well, now, if this is my tic, I want to try to find which muscles are actually involved in performing the tic. So I find I turn my head this way, and I might place my hands lightly on the muscles that I think might be involved. I place my hands so that I can feel those muscles moving. It makes it easier for me to become aware of them. And I can feel it with my hands. I can also begin to identify inside my neck. I can feel the pressure, which makes it easier to really get specific with which muscles and which parts of the muscles. Now, I might find that I'm using a muscle here, but before that, I'm actually using muscles over here to turn my head down. So first, I turn my head down, and then I turn to the side. We usually find that motor tics especially are a chain of behaviors. It's a whole sequence of actions that are taken, starting in this case, first over here with pulling my head down before I turn. If I address the first part of a chain, then usually the rest of the chain won't occur. So I don't need to pay as much attention perhaps to this part of the tic I can actually just focus on this part here. And I find, okay, these muscles tense up over here, and I pull down. Well, what can I do to interfere with that? Now, perhaps somewhat ironically, I might actually tense up the muscles on the opposite side, which is not an easy thing to do voluntarily normally. Usually people don't pay that much attention to the muscles in their neck. So again, I can lightly apply pressure here so I can find those muscles. Okay, there, now I've got them tensed up. So my hand makes it easier for me to find those muscles and tense them. And now if I tense those, it's harder to pull my head down. It's not impossible. I could still overpower these muscles and I can make it happen, but I have to expend a lot more energy and effort to do that. And if you remember from the previous video, we talked about how tics are kind of maintained by a balance of the effort that is used to achieve the payoff. So if I tense up these muscles over here, it makes it harder for me to do this, which means that now I'm having to expend more effort, more energy in order to perform the tic. And the payoff, as far as my brain is concerned, it's not as worthwhile. So this is kind of a way to start thinking about developing your exercises. So you talk about the tic, what parts you think are involved that might make the tic occur. You try to possibly imitate or fake the tic to see if you can make it look like it would be involved. And if this happens to cause the tic to occur, that's okay. Let's use that. Use it to gather information. That's what we need. And you can lightly press your hands, not hard, just lightly, so you can feel those muscles moving. Okay? Then you can start identifying, well, what is the sequence of events? And target early in that chain. So in this case, is first I pull my head to the side and then I turn. Well, pulling my head to the side is the part that I really want to focus on initially. That will be the first part of the chain, and then I may not need to do anything about the rest of the chain. We'll see. So I'd like to encourage you also to always think of developing exercises and trying them out almost as a kind of experiment for yourself. It doesn't mean you'll make it work right away. You experiment with it, come up with an idea, test it, and see. And maybe it will work quickly, maybe it won't. And then you can modify. And we always are modifying and refining as we go. And that's okay. That's just part of how the process works. So if you have any questions, again, I want to invite you to send me an email at the email address that I've attached to this account. Hopefully that shows up, that email address does. I don't know if it really does or not. I just hope it does. And also you can send me messages through Facebook, wherever you happen to see the video show up. And otherwise, I'll see you at the next video, and we'll continue talking about developing effective treatments, exercises for tics. Thank you.